a big problem in our community is illegal dumping, right? And so it impacts the communities that probably least need it. Our frontline communities are certainly impacted by it as much as any other communities. And this is a good story because one of our local elected officials actually has had the courage to step in and do something about that. And so our own Assemblyman Bill Moen, who no relation to me, represents the it's the 5th legislative district, and it's parts of Camden and Gloucester counties. And so we're going to bring in Assemblyman Bill Moen to talk about his this excellent piece of legislation he's just introduced. Assemblyman Moen, are you there?
Hi, Sean. I am here, and I have to admit, it did cross my mind at some point that there's only one letter that is different between your last name and mine, and it sounds quite similar.
You own the faucet,
right? No, if I own the faucet, I don't know if I'd be in the legislature. But I do want to just say thank you for the opportunity. And for everyone, I understand you have a packed agenda. I will be very brief. I do want to mention, if I can, with the time I have. So when I was younger, I had the opportunity to serve as a coach for the North Camden Little League. And for those that aren't familiar with the city of Camden, North Camden Little League is within the area of obviously North Camden. They play at Pine Point Park, which is a park that's situated along the Delaware River and across really from where Petty's Island is located. One of the things that I personally noticed when I was coaching was that we would find ourselves as we'd arrive at practice to coach these young kids from Camden and North Camden and Kramer Hill, that folks would be coming in the middle of the night and dumping their pickup trucks full of trash and debris, construction material, and otherwise, within 15 feet of the first base line from where these kids were playing every day. And you have to imagine, we are within, I would say, 50 feet to 100 feet of the Delaware River. And so as I was coaching, we would talk with parents, and it was absolutely identified that this was such a problem, because not only was there a question of whether this product that was being dumped here was hazardous to the river and perhaps any of the lands that was there, but there were absolutely days where I was coaching where I could see a gust of wind blowing things that you could imagine could be harmful to the residents and the kids that we were coaching while they're on the ball field. And for those that are on this call that may have grown up in different areas of New Jersey and otherwise, I think we all would agree that the last thing that we should expect our children to expect is to have to deal with that kind of thing as they're learning the game of baseball. So that's just one example that I had coming into this conversation. But I must say that for me, the impetus for me sponsoring this legislation was coupled and paired with that experience, but then also the conversations that I've had locally with some of the community groups in the city of Camden and otherwise. And it's no hidden secret at all that the city of Camden ends up paying out of pocket over $4 million a year to dispose of the illegal dumping that they identify. I cannot imagine many other municipalities around the state of New Jersey having to deal with that. And so the message that I've heard from the community, from groups across the city, whether in Kramer Hill or South Camden, to Centerville, to Cooper Grant, they want us to be able to show the state these illegal dumpers that Camden is not their dumping ground. And look, I say this up front because, as you'll hear, there are other municipalities around the state that once they heard we were doing this, have reached out. At this point, what I did was I worked with the community leaders to introduce legislation. For those that want to do further research, the bill number is A5663. And in a very quick sense, what it does is it increases the penalties for unauthorized transportation, which is key, transportation, and then the disposal of solid waste. And so to just go through some very quick points here, fines would be doubled for illegal dumping. Community service would be increased from 90 days to 180 days. And the idea there would be, in a perfect scenario, the people that are caught doing this, the idea would be that they then would have to complete their community service in the communities that they felt they could dump in. And that's really where we're going with this. The other pieces of the legislation would be that the owner can sue for damages for up to 3 times the amount of the damages that they had incurred. So imagine a private lot or a business. If you were listening to NJ 1015 last week, they had callers that were calling in saying they owned warehouses in Camden that had cameras pick up people that were illegal dumping. Well, in most cases, that dumping is not necessarily going to be addressed if it were not for the municipal government working with these private lots and owners. And that's where the price tag adds up for the city of Camden. It's because the city, DPW, the Department of Public Works, they then are the folks that are expected in many of these instances to come out and pick up the trash that was illegally dumped. And so then it becomes not just a crime to commit against an individual lot, but it really becomes a crime that I would argue is one that is committed against all of us as the taxpayers of the state. So the last thing I'll mention is that the local government will have a piece, an avenue for them to also recover their expenses, which is not something that can be offered now. So this does create an avenue for a place like Camden or Newark or Patterson for the municipal government to go after these damages. And the last thing I'll say, Sean, just I know I want to be very respectful of everyone's time. We introduced this legislation about 3 weeks ago. And within the last 3 weeks, we've had interest from many areas of the state, Essex County, Passaic County, Morris County, and even Union County. We have support on this legislation from both Democrats and Republicans that have signed on to support this bill. So it is our hope. We have some committee hearings that are coming up before the budget is debated and considered at the end of June. So we're really hoping, we're pushing to get this legislation on the Assembly Environment Committee agenda in June of 2021. And so if there's anything that you all might want to do to help, it will be to appeal to the chairman of the Environment Committee in the State Assembly. And I will make sure I put this information in the chat. But if you can help, we would just ask that you write an email to the chairman of the committee requesting that the legislation will be considered in the upcoming environmental committee in the State Assembly. And so I will put all that information in the chat. We'll also follow up with Sean afterwards to provide that information as well. Sean, I will stop there. I know that there were a couple topics that you had sent over. I don't know how much time you had allotted for me, so I'll just stop there for a second and see if you have any input.
No, that's awesome. And the one great thing about Tri-County Sustainability, it's 101 towns, it's 10 legislative districts. So each one of us can reach out to our. Funny enough, the one thing I'd ask you to explain, I'm in Oakland, and every town that surrounds me is part of your district, but we're not in your district. And so if you could just spend maybe 10 seconds and explain how they create districts in New Jersey, that'd be really helpful. That was a joke. That's a joke.
Well, I was going to say, you'll see this play out. Well, as we all know, with the census being delayed, we'll see this play out for our own eyes and entertainment over the course of the next few months in the next year or so. So
sure, but should we all be reaching out to our own assembly people and our own 10 legislative districts on the line? So our own senators and our legislators, our assembly people, right?
And Sean, that's a great point. As we work to get this legislation considered, obviously the important piece of this is to have the chairman of the committee give the permission to allow for the bill to be heard and voted on, which will allow that then to advance to the General Assembly. But what you can also do, and this is another area and avenue of advocacy, you could reach out to your individual legislator and ask them to sponsor this legislation. And by doing that, we can build the list of sponsors to the point where the legislative leadership might not have a choice based on the support that they have on this bill to move it forward.
Right. That's awesome. And I'd say, obviously, our frontline communities are impacted by this, but it's not just them, right? It's the entire state. It's Gloucester County certainly has had some problems with dumping. Burlington County, it wasn't too long ago what Brendan Burn Park had some massive illegal dumping problems. So this bill would help the whole state, right?
Absolutely. And just to put a finer point on that, I was listening to the radio recently, and there was a caller from Pemberton who was explaining how close they were to some of New Jersey's most precious space, and the fact that this has been a problem they've been dealing with for decades. And it's something that while we're working on this will be what I would call the penalty phase of this. We're also working with the State Attorney General's office and also our federal delegation to provide more resources for the enforcement piece of this, the identification on the front end that needs to happen too. I just wanted to throw that out there. So it's a piece of the puzzle, the greater puzzle. That's
awesome. And I'm sensitive to your schedule, and I thank you so much for your time. The one thing I'd say is this bill is a stick, and it's important to have sticks. There's also some carrots we could probably work out with our friends in the business community to help them with their supply chain management and less waste reduction. So maybe that's something we'd ask you to think about going forward, how we can do both sides of it, carrot and stick, right?
I'm happy to have that conversation, Charles.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Assemblyman. Have a great night. We really appreciate it. And you're welcome back here anytime.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.